Ahead of the latest European Cocoa Association Forum, we catch up with its recently elected president, Paul Davies of Sugden, discussing some of the major challenges that the organisation and the wider industry is facing, including deforestation, child labour and wider supply chain matters. Well, thank you again, Paul, for joining us today to chat about ECA and your upcoming event. But firstly, how does it feel to be made president of the ECA?
Well, very privileged. I think it's extremely. I feel very lucky in some ways being able to be able to really have that responsibility, because it's something we all share. We all feel very, I wouldn't say protective about it. I just think we all realize how important it is. The cocoa market is an exceptional business environment, work environment, sector generally. It's so diverse, it's so spread globally, it's such a brilliant product, and such an amazing business, really. On one end of it, we have the great, chocolate businesses, which are, I think, very, 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 very strong in all our hearts. And then on the other side of it, stronger in our hearts as cocoa traders, is our origin partners, for whom this is an enormous employer and a vast sector, which is hugely important in so many areas in the world. So it's extraordinary, the being the bridge. And I think for the European Cocoa Association, I think it's a great privilege for me, but it's been a long time. I'm trying to think how long I've been in the business now, and it's 35 years since I started trading. And I think we've got a few challenges ahead of us, which it was always thus. I hope to goodness I can be responsible and strong enough to encourage people to be talking and communicating and solving, which is what we have to do. We have to cooperate and we have to find solutions, and we've always got to be thinking forward. It's a great business to be in. It's incredible.
From your perspective, you've just coming on to your event itself. What are your hopes and anticipation? Conference going to be there, taking place in Rome? It's a big deal from your organisation's perspective, isn't it?
I think it's a very big deal at the moment. I think it's a sort of conflagration of a lot of things. Meeting and the timing is arguably coincidental, but it never quite is. I think it's sort of fate that's bringing us all together at a very, very important time, just in front of next season. Next season looks pretty balanced, I think, in terms of the sort of supply and demand side of it. We've got headwinds all over the place at the moment, very expensive fertilizers, tough conditions, I think, for farmers, tough conditions for consumers. So I think we've got that in the background, plus we've got potential legislation and regulation coming our way from the European Union, and also I think from generally around the consuming world, that wants to tackle full on the long-term issues that we're all facing, that we all share with our kids, which is the environmental future of the planet. And so I think it's very important that cocoa plays its part in that. Getting there, of course, always going to be subject to plenty of discussion. So an answer to what do I hope for Rome and for the forum is plenty of good discussion. No such thing as a bad idea. I think we've just got to hear it. We've got to talk. We've got to think. We all are looking for the same thing, which is that we're looking for good outcomes for everyone in each part of this sector, and not least of whom is the 5 to 10 million farmers in West Africa who probably have the least voice. I think they're lucky in being represented by some very formidable and very, very intelligent and very, very kind and excellent people who will make the case and will make so forcibly for trying to produce sustainable incomes, as while at the same time I think our consuming regulators are going to be looking in the long term about the environment. Ultimately, of course, they both serve the same purpose. I think sustainability is a little bit overused from time to time, but I think we all understand what we're really looking for here. we're looking to sustain a great business that employs a great many people, that straddles the world. And we've got to make some adjustments, I think, into how we look at ourselves. And I think that's what the forum helps us do.
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned before there, I enjoyed the last forum that was staged pre-pandemic, and looking back to that, one of the key takeaways from it was the fact that we had strong presence from the Ivory Coast and Ghanaian governments there, and they were putting forward the kind of concerns we're talking there about environmental matters with regards to deforestation, and also look to the issue of child labour, which is sadly still very prevalent in the sector. So how do you see those issues best being resolved in your eyes?
Well, I think I don't think there's a sort of magic bullet. I think that the most critical thing is that we all get perspective, and that's partly, I think, what the forum, partly what discussion, partly what meeting does. I think the risk is, and we often see it, I think, in the kind of modern world, and I think I'm allowed to say that 35 years in the business, is that sometimes perhaps through social media or through the immediacy that that method of communication seems to give us, is that we tend to look for shorter solutions, which are very often rather elusive. And I think the point is that we're all looking really for the same thing. I think that West Africa itself, I think, is a very responsible producer. I think it's possible that at times we're apt to pick, which I think is the European, possibly American, I have no idea more, but European method of political dialogue. You know, we tend to not look at the generalities. We tend to pick at where we can criticize and shape. And I think that process is very healthy. I think we have to be a little bit careful, because I think the Ivory Coast governments and the Ghanaian governments are not blessed with the same kind of resources as, let's say, Germany or Switzerland or the United Kingdom or France or Italy. And so I think their ability to affect change in an immediate way is not the same, perhaps, as the expectations can be. So it's critical that as we look for landing the regulation that's ahead of us, that we do so in simpatico, in partnership with our origin partners. They are fantastic custodians of millions and millions of farms. We should be careful not to pick out one or two bad apples and try and judge them all. I think on the whole, the world in West Africa is developing very well. I think cocoa is a vehicle for that. And I think we need to be careful that we don't sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater. How do we get there in a straightforward way? I think what we need is a form of development partnership, I think, that covers perhaps a wider, more landscaped, more nuanced policy than perhaps going down the absolute simple. But I think when it comes to the enormous dispersion of cocoa farming in West Africa, it is millions of very small holders, that we can look at the landscapes perhaps as being probably where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. And I just feel with good information, good knowledge and good education and a goodwill on all sides, I think we are actually going to head that way.